Okay.
The coffin's been lowered, and the rabbi's getting ready to speak.
There we go. You got it now.
Yeah, we're gonna go. We'll go through.
I want to thank everyone for coming and joining us today as we pay respects to a beloved member of our community, husband, father, grandfather, Boaz Kahana, Boaz ben Yosef Efron. Really, I was mentioning to the family last evening that we've missed him really for a period of time. We even haven't been able to come to the shul for a little while, but every time he came, he enriched us. He enriched us through his presence, through his wisdom, through his insights. I'm just going to explain how we're going to proceed this afternoon. I'm going to start off by reading a parak of Tehillim. After I read that parak of Tehillim, we'll turn it over to the family to say the words of eulogy. We'll start off with his beloved wife, and then we'll go to his two sons, going in age order accordingly. We do know there are many, many people with us over Zoom, and we're honored that so many people are coming to pay tribute to him, a man who truly deserved it. I want to mention as well my colleague Rabbi Levitt, and thank his presence, thank his assistants, and all those who came to really pay tribute to this small man, but a giant of a person. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Echzor, Binos Teshi Arbiteni Amei Menuchos Yinaleini, Nafshi Yishovev, Yancheni V'Maglei Tzedek Leman Shimo, Kam Ki Elech V'Geitz Al Mavet, Lui Warat Ki Ato Imodi, Shivtecha Meshantecha Himo Yenachamuni, Taruch Lefanai Shulchan, Neged Zoriroi, Dishanta Vashem En Roshi Kosi Rivoyo, Achtov Chesed Yudafuni Ko Yemei Chayai V'Shabti Veis Adonai Li'orech Yamim. Just to translate in English. Song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God makes me lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Be only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. To pay tribute to our Kohen, Rav Boaz, will first call upon his wife. You can, if you're more comfortable, you want to stay from there?
Thank you, dear family and friends, for coming out. I don't have any kind of a prepared speech, but I want to say a few words about Boaz and the privilege of having been his wife. I'm a very lucky person. I survived the Holocaust in Hungary. Not many people survived. I was fortunate to come to America as a teenager when I could have been left to live in Hungary where a Jewish life was not really very much possible. And I came to America and went to Maimonides High School where Rabbi Cohen made it clear that anything was possible that you want to achieve for Tikkun Olam. I went on to Stone College and I was a 19-year-old refugee from Hungary and started dating. And I discovered that many of the Bachrim that came to date girls were very careful with not paying for parking or how much money they would spend on the girl that they were taking out. And that was until I met Boaz Kahana. He's 7 years older than me, and he was beginning to work as a clinical psychologist at Kings County Hospital. And he very quickly figured out that I was eating cans of sardines every night because I didn't have money to pay for the university's cafeteria. So he would say that he's very hungry when he got to Stone College and that we should go out for dinner. And every time he came to see me, we went out for dinner and sometimes to a movie. But most of the time, we would sit somewhere like Farm Foods and he would lecture to me about psychology. And he would lecture about how wonderful it was to do science and to achieve something in one's life that could better other people's well-being and other people's lot. And so he inspired me really to go on for a PhD, where many of the other girls who got married got jobs as secretaries so they could support their husband who may not have made a lot of money. And so we landed up together at the University of Chicago as graduate students. And I told you this little story because this exemplifies Boaz's character and the person that Boaz was. when we finished the University of Chicago, he got a job at a prestigious university, Washington University, but he wasn't really that happy because I didn't have a tenure-track job. And even though I was satisfied, I was having babies and publishing and all of that, and I wasn't particularly looking for a tenure-track job, he decided to give up his prestigious position at Washington University and go to a lesser school so I too could have a tenure-track job. So his interest in nurturing me and helping me and making sure that I succeed was totally unparalleled. And then, thankfully, we had good careers together. And when we had our children, Boaz also was somebody very unusual. I'm an only child, and so I knew nothing about babies. I never babysat, and I was really scared of these little babies that you could drop on the floor or something. And Boaz, as a natural, would go and take care of them at night. And so we had an embarrassing situation when people came to visit us from out of town. The babies would cry out and say daddy instead of saying mommy, because Boaz heard them and was there very happy to help them. Michael told me the other day, now that this tragedy happened, that he still remembers as a baby that he would say to his dad, lie down next to me, and Boaz would lie down next to his crib, and many a night I would find Boaz asleep next to Michael's crib. So later on and throughout his life, Boaz's major aspiration was to help students, to help people to discover science, to discover the importance of knowledge, and to turn it to something useful for the betterment of humankind. And when he was, Boaz was a very healthy man. He exercised, he ate healthy until he was afflicted with this carcinoid tumor in his early 60s. And then he had a Whipple operation, which they consider the Mount Everest of surgeries. And there are very few long-term Whipple survivors. And Boaz always had a positive outlook on the world. If there is such a thing as being a born optimist, Boaz was a born optimist. And he would always see the possibilities and how helping others made him very happy. So that he really worked with his own students, but he also worked with my students. It became a sort of expectation that they'll come to the house and Boaz will tell them how to get your dissertation done quickly, how to get a job. But they weren't his students, they were my students. It didn't matter to him. I think that as long as he could help somebody, he got a tremendous satisfaction out of that. And so Boaz was really a scholar and a gentleman, and when he went into the Cleveland Clinic 10 days ago, still hoping that he will get better, he couldn't eat very well anymore. Food didn't taste good to him. And Dr. Frankel took good care of him and took an interest in him. But when he went into the hospital, he carried with him the Scientific American and Foreign Affairs that were on his table at the hospital. He also loved to study languages, so he was studying German and French and Spanish, and he still took a Spanish dictionary with him. And when he saw that things weren't so good in the hospital, he told me to take the Spanish dictionary home because he's not going to be able to learn a lot of Spanish, but he will still read his science magazines. He was fascinated with science. He really felt that the betterment of humankind and also the betterment of our people could be most benefited by helping them through science. And also helping them through Menschlichkeit. I mean, Boaz was an ultimate mensch, very, very humble. If you had to say something about his character, he was characterized by humility. He was not out there to look to win prizes, but he did win some. He got the teaching award from Cleveland State University. In 2019, he got the Best Researcher Award at the age of 85, based on his publications at Cleveland State. And he didn't want to retire. He worked even when his body no longer wanted to get him to work. And we had an assistant who, if he ran out of steam and couldn't speak anymore, then the assistant would pitch in. And at the end of 2019, he finally agreed to retire. But he was still involved in so many intellectual pursuits. And I think Hashem blessed us. I don't think anybody could ask for more wonderful children than we have had. And I think that that's to a great extent, a tribute to Boaz being a role model for how you put others ahead of yourself and how to pursue intellectual endeavors and how you promote science. So I don't want to say goodbye to him, but I guess this is a goodbye ceremony. But I think that I had the greatest honor and privilege to be his wife.
I'd like to now call up his son, Dr. Jeffrey.
Can they see me? Yes. Yes. Okay. I want to thank all of you who have come, you know, on behalf of my mom, on behalf of my brother Michael and his wife Jessica, my wife Marlene, all of our children. You know, we all feel a profound sense of loss. And I think it's important for me to also say that there's an even deeper feeling of gratitude for everyone who's here on Zoom with us, whose presence is so valued, and for all of you who've come, from Rabbi Blau, who was kind enough to help us kind of in the last minute. This was not something we planned. My dad was not in hospice, but he was in declining health, and so very quickly we had to move from perhaps a recovery to a non-recovery. And there's so many wonderful people here, and so I want to acknowledge each one of you, and we're really thankful for your presence and being here. I just want to say at the beginning, if there's one word that I think captured my father, and my mom alluded to the fact that he was a teacher, but his method of teaching was really through presence. He would listen to people deeply. He cared about what they said. He cared about how they would develop and grow as human beings. And so he wasn't there to tell them, learn this, learn that, do this thing, but he really was a person through his presence, and he was deeply humble. who tried to kind of find in another person their essential goodness. No matter what the situation might have been, he was never part of a group in a university, factions doing this. He really was just a simple teacher and a simple person. His enjoyments were, when he could, he loved going to shul. He loved going to the Green Road Synagogue, and I should also say he loved going to the Shtibel. He grew up in a very Orthodox family on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. He went to RJJ, and then he went to YU, and he was a year away from getting smicha, and then he decided he was going to pursue his interest and go on for psychology. But that early background was very much a part of him. And so I want to say something about that early background, because I don't think we can know my father unless we talk about really where he came from. And I want to mention specifically his siblings. So Chaiki and Baruch, they were the foundation, along with his parents, Yosef and Batya, and they set him up on a path where, in a way, success was not measured in monetary terms, in prestige or in awards, even though in each of their cases, Chaiki and Baruch would go on to successful careers. My uncle Baruch as a physician, a radiation oncologist, my aunt Chaiki as a social worker, but that foundation of closeness to his siblings was, I think, in the essence of his personhood. Closeness, learning from others, and wanting to teach them. And in a way, I have to acknowledge that who he was in a large part about where he came from and how things were done in his home. And so I acknowledge that and thank each one of you, his siblings, for helping create the father that we would eventually have. And of course, he would meet my mom, and he would partner with her as an academic, but also as a life partner, together for many, many years, thank God. And my mom, just to kind of get a sense of it, was a huge advocate, coming out of the Holocaust and coming from a time when you had to advocate to survive. When my dad would be sick, she was constantly advocating, how do we get the best medical care? And that's how, along with my wonderful brother Michael, they were able to get my dad the care he needed 20 years ago at Mass General, that he would be able to survive with the carcinoid illness that he had that had actually gotten into his liver back then, and the doctors weren't sure how well he would do. And here we are 21 years later, and in fact my mom received a nice note from, first of all, one of his doctors, wonderful doctors, Dr. Frankel, who's here, and I think he's here, the other doctor from Mass General, and Dr. Warshaw, and from Dr. Isaacson, all of them complimenting her advocacy skills that helped him move my dad forward. I just want to say a little bit also about kind of how much he enjoyed the community. I mean, he really my dad loved going to shul. That was sort of a highlight of his week. He would sit next to a dear friend of his who unfortunately passed away, Carl Sachs, and they would be constantly enjoying, what was going on in shul. They were fortunate that there was a wonderful person who would lead the services, who was a wonderful Baal Tefillah, and that's Moshe Levinger, and they enjoyed his presence. And he really, that was a highlight really for him and for his week. And then I just want to say one other thing, as a parent, what kind of a parent was my father? My father was, as I mentioned, a teacher whose model was what drove the teaching rather than whose words were. So you saw somebody who loved to teach, and so my brother and I ended up being college professors. It's not surprising, given that's what we saw. We saw he loved it. He never worked in his life. He loved going into the classroom. He loved, even into his later years when he could hardly physically pull himself into the class, he would pull himself, cross Euclid, get up there, manage to somehow talk for an hour and 20 minutes about his favorite subjects, abnormal psychology, talking about human development. These things really interested him. and seeing his students sort of derive knowledge, but from their own learning rather than from him teaching. And then just one more thing to add, really. As a parent and a grandparent, my dad had not only my brother and myself, but he had 7 grandchildren. And I have a child with special needs, and Michael has a child with special needs. And my dad loved and embraced all of his grandchildren. He had time for everyone. And I think the one thing I would leave this talk with, and really it's not about him or us, but it's about when he was present with someone, he was 100% present. There wasn't a thought on his mind, what am I doing next? What's next in my book? Can I succeed with something else? He was literally there, listening and in touch. And I think that's what Michael and I saw growing up, and he shared that with his grandchildren and with our wives, Michael's wife Jessica, my wife Marlene. And I should say that one of the things that really, for me personally, was my son Rafi, in many ways shared a lot of my dad's interests in science, chess, math, violin. And so as my dad was actually sitting dying, we had Rafi's violin, and he was listening to that, and it was very touching to see how my dad still, in the last day, Friday, clapped before several hours later not being able to breathe and dying. And so I guess I would say thank you. Thank you to each one of you who came here. Your presence mattered. I assure you of that. It mattered greatly to us. It was the defining feature, as I say, of what my father was about. And I thank my brother Michael for his presence, coming in last minute, not expected, from Philadelphia, running into the hospital room. And I thank each one of you for taking the time to be here with us. I know my father would say thank you, and I appreciate you, and I have gratitude for all you've done for us. So thank you, everybody.
I don't know if I can really add much to the beautiful words that my mom and my brother said about my father's life. They captured his essence in so many ways. The generosity of spirit that you heard about was his persona. And I remember as a small child hearing the stories from Aunt Heike about how my father just loved everybody as a kid. So, sometimes he was so friendly that he'd run off and, with just to wanna be nice to whoever it was and just to do chesed. I mean, he was just about chesed. And you heard a lot about his qualities as a teacher. I think for him, teaching and chesed were intertwined. For him, the concept of being a teacher and the concept of doing gemilas chasadim, of doing acts of loving kindness, were not separate, but they were one and the same. They were the same essential element, because through teaching, he saw himself as a coach, as somebody who could try to bring out the best in whoever it was. And he believed. I went to a couple of times, he was sick, and I came to Cleveland and I offered to teach his class for him. I'm a psychology professor too at Cleveland State University, and my father wanted to teach. He said, well, let me teach for the first half of the class, and you can then take the second half of the class. And he was a master teacher. But what amazed me is, he taught at Cleveland State University, and he saw in every one of those young people, many of whom they were the first in their family to have a college education. He saw in every one of them the potential of greatness, that they could become great, that they could achieve anything if they set their heart to it, that they could accomplish anything. I think I could go on, my father was a professor and a teacher. It was his essence, and I think he would give lectures about many topics, and I could go on and do this for a long time because I have so many memories to share. I'll just share a few comments. So when I was, my mom already mentioned the sort of lovingness of a parent, that as a child, if I ever had any a nightmare, or I was just not able to fall asleep, my father would lie down next to me. And that was sort of like my earliest memories as a small I don't know, as a toddler, was of my father lying down next to me in the bed and comforting me when I was needing comfort. But when I was a little bit older, I learned a couple of terms, very important terms from my father. Nachamol and Vidramol, Zog Nachamol. Yankele, Zog Nachamol. Say it again, do it again. I would play the piano. My father heard there was a great piano teacher. He didn't care about piano from where he came in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Nobody had a piano there. He was lucky at one point that he had enough money to buy a cheap little harmonica. And his siblings can know that story well. But they didn't have a piano. He didn't know from pianos there. But he wanted me to have, he heard there was a great teacher, Fedora Horowitz. He wanted me to learn piano from her. And he said, well, once a week is okay, but why not? Nacham, I'll go twice a week. Okay, it should go twice a week. And every day in the evening, it was always something else. If it was piano, if it was learning Torah, if it was learning math or physics, he wanted me to learn, to grow as a person. And so he would sit down next to the piano, and however bad I played, he would say, it's beautiful, Michael, it's beautiful, Yankel. Zog, you do it again, do it one more time, it's perfect, but just do it one more time. That was his essence, do it one more time. Till eventually I was able to play for him nice music. And now Rafi and Nathan and Joseph and Sammy are playing instruments. And that was his essence. When I was older, I'll just share one last story, jumping forward many years. My father at this point was now in his late 70s, almost 80 years old. And I guess it was right before Shmuel Tzvi, my son Sammy, was born. And I used to sometimes go, if I could, I would go to, because I picked up my older boys from school, I would come home right around Mincha time. So I would go to the yeshiva. The yeshiva had Mincha, the Philadelphia yeshiva had Mincha at 3:45 usually in the afternoon. So I would go there for Mincha, and they asked me if maybe I wanted to give a guest lecture in a science. They had a science class there for the high school. Yeah. So I said sure. I said to the Rosh Yeshiva, I was surprised. The Rosh Yeshiva wanted me, a professor at Penn, to lecture to the Bachrim there at the Philadelphia Yeshiva. So okay, I gave them a lecture about science, and they liked it. The boys didn't mind listening to me talk about science. So I came and I lectured again. And my father instilled this value. So in the end, I just stayed for the whole year. I taught the science class in the high school for the whole year, the rest of the year, until it was almost the end of the year. And Sammy was about to be born. And my dad came in. And, as you heard from my brother, my father grew up. He went to RJJ. He was studying for smicha. He was learning. He was very involved in Torah study as well as in all of his academic endeavors. And so he wanted to come in and see my class. So I said, Dad, do you want to tell the boys something? So, okay. In 1 hour and 20 minutes or 1 hour and 15 minutes, he gave al regel achas, on one foot, he summarized the totality of behavioral science and abnormal psychology in a way that the boys could absorb it from their background. And he synthesized it. I wish I had a recording. It was so magnificent, that lecture. And, the consummate teacher, my father taught his brother, Uncle Baruch, for his bar mitzvah. He taught my brother Jeff for his bar mitzvah. He taught me for my bar mitzvah, Parshas Naso. I still remember the whole parsha. And then he taught my boys, Nathan and Joseph, for their bar mitzvahs. And until about a month ago, he was still teaching Joseph, Yosef Moshe, for his bar mitzvah. And that was so meaningful to him. It was so precious to him to do it, even though it was such a difficult thing for him to do at that stage of his health. I don't have any more words other than to say that, you know, my tati was everything to me. And I can't bear the thought of being without him. Okay, thank you.
We have all the grandchildren.
Esteemed friends and family of Boaz Kahana. This here is a leaf of an evergreen tree. I speak on the behalf of not just myself, but on the behalf of my brother Ezekiel, my mother Marlene. This is a leaf of the evergreen tree. Every winter, this tree stays green, winter after winter, day after day. For me, this tree was my grandfather. Several times in his life, he faced deadly illnesses, but he always came back year after year, just like the evergreen tree. I find it very symbolic that this is the place he lies in a forest of them. My grandfather was not just a grandfather to me. He was a mentor. And even though many times I could have been better, he never screamed. He never shouted. One of the things I respected him so much for was the fact that he was always so calm. Big rains, monsoons, and winds hit evergreen trees all of the time, but they never fall down. They never die. Year after year, they come back. Thank you all for your listening.
I want to thank all the family members for their beautiful words. As was noted, one of the people that he enjoyed listening to so much in shul was Maish Levinger. So I've asked Maish, who's here, to now say the Kol Malek, to say the memorial prayer. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, actually, I stand corrected. We're going to have via Zoom, perhaps. You want to check my phone?
Hi, we didn't know if we'd be able to get the Zoom working, but if my father's brother and sister want to say something, I would be happy to try and make that work as best as I can. I'm gonna try this. And Chaiki, can you hear me? Hi, Aunt Chaiki. Can you hear me, Aunt Chaiki? We cannot hear you. Okay. Uncle Baruch, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. We can hear you. So if you want to say a few words, I think everybody will hear you. I'm just gonna try this, and then okay. It's my father's brother, Baruch Kahana. Okay, Uncle Baruch.
All right. Hope you can hear me. First, I must apologize. I've never before delivered a hesped, a eulogy. I'm totally unpracticed in this sad art. What can I tell you about my beloved brother Boaz? Alon HaShalom. I can tell you that he was always optimistic, because he was. I can tell you that he was always positive, because he was. His glass was always half full, never half empty. Also, I can tell you that I was very lucky to have had many good teachers, but my best teacher was my beloved brother Boaz. He started teaching me when I was 4 years old. And what did he teach me? To play chess. A 10-year-old teaching his 4-year-old brother to play chess. Quite amazing. But thanks to him, I've been playing chess for the last 76 years. Then he taught me photography and biology and chemistry. When I was 7, he took a strip of magnesium ribbon. I have no idea where he got it, and inserted it into an electrical outlet. Now, please do not do this at home. That produced an amazing blue flash that I can still see in my mind's eye. It also blew out the fuse in our apartment, so everything went rather dark. Our mother was not amused. Boaz was irrepressible, and his science experiments and misadventures continued. Also, he taught me how to swim and how to land in the Torah. He taught me my bar mitzvah parsha, and then I taught my sons. I think when he was 10, someone asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. His answer, a professor. A professor. And he did indeed become a professor, a beloved professor. He finally retired last year at age 85 and a half. Quite an amazing record. So what else can I say? I offer my deepest condolences to Eva. His devotion to Boaz was unsurpassed. And to my wonderful nephews, Jeffrey and Mike, I will miss him. I already miss him. Tahei nafsho tzura, Yisroch hachayim.
Thank you, Uncle Baruch. And Heike, do you want to? You don't have to. If you turn off we don't hear you, but if you turn off your phone, if you're just on the computer, we'll hear you, I think. Okay, I don't think we can hear Aunt Heike.
A minute.
Hadar, I heard you beautifully.
Okay, talk, Mommy.
If you turn the volume off on the computer, then I think it'll...
Talk. When you're fighting for a brother like Boaz, doesn't come around too often. Boaz and I were 17 months apart. People considered us as twins. Did many things together. All the things that we knew. Boaz, in spite of all his intellectual pursuits, he was not a nerd. Boaz was mischievous. He loved excitement. He made excitement happen wherever he was. He took a knife and stuck it into a socket when he must have been 2 or 3 years old. He discovered electricity. He jumped, not from the shock, but from the joy of discovering electricity. As Eva said, he was very much into health. He built his own barbells. He lifted weights. He made a scooter. He made a, what do you call those, shoe shine box. There was nothing that Boaz could not do, and nothing that he was not interested in. Everything interested him. At a very young age, he decided that he wanted to go into medicine. So I think at age 7, he wrote his own first aid book. And then, of course, once he started all the exercise, he knew all the bones in the body, the pectoral and the biceps and what have you. One day I came home from, I must have been in college at that point, and of course Boaz was a pre-med student, and the desk in my bedroom had something on it. I turned on the light and there was a starfish. Boaz was always dissecting things in the house with a dissecting kit. So his knowledge was broad. He went from music to art, to chess, to photography, psychology. Everything was in his grasp. He was a very, very jolly person. He never spoke badly of anyone. In all these years that we've been together and grew up together, never did I hear anything negative about anyone. He always found the good in people. Boaz loved family. As you can hear from Eva, Michael, Jeffrey, and Baruch. He was a family person. He loved his home, he loved his wife, he loved his children. He just loved everyone. There was a doctor that lived down the street from us on Henry Street. His name was Dr. Salmon. His wife would sit out over in the front on a chair in the morning. Boaz would walk to RJJ, which was just a block away from her home, and he said good morning to her. And she was very impressed with him. Here, this young boy said good morning to her. She told that to my mother one day, and she said she goes out every morning just to hear Boaz's good morning. He was polite to everyone, and as I said, he didn't see anyone's faults. He also only saw their goodness. I cannot imagine life without Boaz. We would have many discussions on the phone. I would talk to him about many of my clients. I was doing geriatric social work. That was his field and Eva's field. We discussed many cases. He always was able to find a point where I could interject and intervene and help someone in any particular difficult case that I might have had. As Michael said, there's much to say about Boaz. He had many dimensions to him. He was not a flat, one-dimensional person. On behalf of my children, and send our love to everybody. Our condolences. We're very, very sorry that we cannot be there with you in this terrible hour. Boaz will live forever in our hearts. Malcolm Menachem Etchem B'Tol Sha'ar Avlei Tzion Yerushalayim.
Thank you so much, Chaiti and Baruch. Thank you. I'm going to turn the microphone. I'm going to turn this to the rabbi, to Rabbi Blau.
Thank you all the family members. You beautiful tribute. We're going to call upon Mike Schlevinger. Say that, come on.
I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to say one couple minutes, just dvarim yotzim min halev that come from the heart. I was a beneficiary and a recipient of Boaz's wisdom, humor, wealth of knowledge, and I enjoyed so much conversations with him. I taught a class with him last year, and whether he was walking into the Alexander Stiebel or Green Road Synagogue or Cleveland State University, wherever he was, people flocked to him because there was an ease, a comfort, a humility, and a menschlichkeit unparalleled, as everybody had said. So I am deeply sorry for your loss, and it's an honor to be at least saying the goodbye to my friend. El molei rachamim shochein bamromim hametzel menucha nechana al kanefei ashechina b'malos kedoshim utehorim kezoar orokia mazirim ese nishmaz Boaz ben Yosef Rafael HaKohen sheholach le'olam ba'avur she'anachnu mispalelim biyad askoras nishmoso Began Eden tehem menuchaso lochein bal rachamim yastireu b'seiser kenofov leolamim b'yitzror b'yitzror achayim es nishmoso Adonai hu nachalo vaso v'yonuach v'shalom v'shalom al mishkol v'nomar amen.
interment. First, we're going to put on the special event, and then we'll do the actual burial.
Slowly, carefully, we're going to come right around the plate. We'll have to move that cripple too. Yeah. Chair right over here. Back down. I've got the chair for you. Thanks, Bruce. See you later.
Anyone who'd like to join us is welcome to come and participate. But please don't put the shovel direct. Send one to another, just put it back in the earth and we'll continue. Make a bracha together.
I'm happy because these are my good clothes.
Rabbi says that he's happy because this is his jacket.
They say the final tefillah that we say, after doing Farvel, when we finish it, it's a very tefillah and we'll say the Kaddish. Special Kaddish. Again, I have it here. Say it together. Say it together. Say the Kaddish on there. You okay? So we've included the saying of Kaddish, the special Kaddish to say at the burial.
So good. Shmei Rabban, Yalvad Hu Asib, Yiskadata, the Achaya, Peistaya, the Aska, the Chaye Alma, the Bibne Karta, Jerusalem, the Shafel,
concludes our service, we're going to start the process of nichum, of comforting of the Avelim. We'll ask everyone to form 2 rows, and the Avelim will walk through. Once we walk through, we start the process of the consolation. So you walk through. You walk through, but let's have Michael come with you. I don't want you to walk by yourself. Michael, later I was walk through and say, I'm not picking up Lesram, we talk to the TND.
Thank you, everybody. I have to look down so I don't knock on the